video game merchandise for a long time was very uncommon, especially in terms of traditional action figures. However, at the turn of the millennium, things changed and we started to get a lot of merchandise, such as the Toy Side Donkey Kong line, the Toy Biz Zelda Ocarina of Time toy line, and most famously the Jakks Pacific World of Nintendo / Super Mario toy line. Now, those were all Nintendo-based properties, but video game action figures aren't just limited to things Nintendo owns. Such examples include the Resource Crash Bandicoot line or the Jazzwares Minecraft line. However, one of the most popular video game characters is Sonic the Hedgehog, and he has had 5 major toy lines, but his most recent one is by far the best, and that is the Jakks Pacific Sonic toy line. The line was first shown off in 2019 at Toy Fair, where they were bendy figures. And yeah, they sadly weren't great, but after 3 waves of these, Jakks Pacific took the feedback from the fans and made his line similar to their Super Mario line, making 4-inch articulated figures and 2.5-inch minifigures. Now, with all this background being set up, let's take a look at every 4-inch Sonic figure and highlight some of the important 2.5-inch ones. The box shows a render of Sonic the Hedgehog at the top with the articulated text below. Then you get the figure in the clear bubble with the accessory if it's a 4-inch figure and no accessory if it's a 2.5-inch figure. Then we get the Sonic the Hedgehog logo below that along with the character's name. On the back you get an image of the figure, the articulation points listed, and a brief bio on the figure. Wave 1 of the 4-inch figures, beginning with Sonic the Hedgehog himself. The figure is a spitting image of the current Sonic character model, which is impressive considering prior attempts looked off in some way. Now, looking at the figure itself, while the figure does look pretty good, the articulation is a bit limited, with only 11 points of movement at the head, shoulders, wrists, legs, knees, and a bit of a swivel at the ankle, though it is technically a ball joint. But that doesn't really help too much, considering the figure is hard to stand if you have loose joints on him, but you can still get him into a running pose, which is all that matters. He includes a spring accessory, which is nice, but not that special. Overall, the figure is pretty cool, but one problem is he is very overproduced. You can go to your Walmart right now and find like 10. The next figure I'll discuss is Tails, who, like Sonic, is very accurate to his CGI models used in the games recently. Now, the figure is smaller, and you'll notice mine is a little different than the stock render I just showed. That's because it's a later variant, but articulation is basically the same as Sonic, but due to the more short nature, his legs have a lot less movement. So you can see they don't really move forward and back too much, and his knees are also very, very limited, but his ankles are a little more posable, and his tails do spin on both versions of the figure. Now, the original figure had really big tails that made him hard to stand straight, so you had to lean him forward if you wanted them upright. He does include an item box accessory from the games, this one being a speed shoe power-up, which is neat and a little bit better than Sonic Spring. But overall, Tails is just kind of an alright figure. He looks very cute, and he does look nice on display, but you're not really going to get anything too cool with this figure. The third figure in the wave is Shadow the Hedgehog. Once again, the sculpting here is very good, capturing this very popular character almost perfectly. Though the inhibitor rings on his wrists and ankles are a little more gold than yellow, like they're usually shown in artwork. Beyond that, the figure has basically the same articulation as Sonic, but legs are a little worse, and ankles are a bit better, so it balances out alright. Now, you'll notice the arms are in a bit of a pre-pose along with the hands, and that's because it's to replicate this very specific render. Now, the figure includes a 10-ring accessory, which you can hold, but you can also give him a more accurate weapon, which, if you want, I used a Star Wars Hero Master Blaster. As overall, Shadow is a pretty good figure. He looks very nice, and that's what matters, and he's one of the best of Wave 1. The final figure of the wave is Dr. Eggman. Now, the figure looks very accurate to his CGI renders like the others. However, the articulation is where things get interesting. While his head is limited, his arms are some of the best yet, as they actually feature elbow joints. However, you'll notice the pattern is only on one side of the arm, making the elbow joints a little useless. Speaking of useless, though, the legs are really bad, only being able to kick up to the side very far, with the lower and back being very limited. But the knees and ankles are still good. Now, the arms are designed to replicate this specific render. That's why the hands are the way they are. He includes a spike accessory, which is nice and cool, but sadly he is a bit short compared to the other figures and would scale much better with the 2.5-inch line. But still, overall, this is probably the best figure in Wave 1 just by having the most articulation he does. Now, granted, the poses are a little limiting, but you can still get him to look cool. So yeah, Wave 1 is a decent way to start the line, and the little growing pains, but not so bad. Now, for the 2.5-inch Wave 1, the figures are basically similar to their 4-inch counterparts and won't be highlighting any characters that have 4-inch figures, as the figures are almost identical, minus some being in different pre-poses. But there are some exceptions of characters that don't have 4-inch figures, one of them being the Chow in this first wave, and they look very cute. They include 3 wings because they are smaller than the other figures, but the articulation is also more limited as they only have a head and shoulder movement. But still, you don't get Chow figures too often, so I'd recommend you pick one of these up if you can find it. Now, Wave 2 introduces something the line will be known for, and that is reissued characters, as Sonic and Tails are in this line again. Now, the Sonic figure is actually unique, as he does have a new snowboard accessory and a new sideways smirk, more similar to that of the adventure games, though it is likely based on this Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games render. Beyond that, though, yeah, the figure is better than Wave 1 Sonic, because the accessory is a lot more character-specific and fun to use, while Tails is sadly identical to the original release, minus a slightly different accessory, but it's the same mold regardless. Up for the new figures, up first is Knuckles, and oh boy, this one's kind of rough. He visually looks accurate to the character, but there's these odd things here. Namely, he's got giant shoes, and he's got a pre-pose stance, so while he does have the same articulation as Sonic, you can't really change his pose too much. And with one hand being open, it's very hyper-specific, so you can't even have him punching with both fists. Now, I think it's based on this render, but I can't really find out like a more accurate render, so it has to probably be based on this in some way. It does include a Chaos Emerald, which is nice. Now, at the time, people thought it might be a Master Emerald, but it's actually a Chaos Emerald. So yeah, this figure is kind of meh. Like, he looks really cool, but you can't really get him into too many poses, unfortunately. And the wave ends with Metal Sonic, who is thankfully much better than Knuckles. The figure looks very cool and accurate to the character. Now, for the articulation, it's the most in the line, along with Eggman, as we actually have elbow joints here. Though, sadly, his biceps don't swivel above, and instead he has a lower forearm swivel, which kind of makes the poses a lot more hyper-specific. Beyond that, though, the legs and knees and ankles all still work. But yeah, the hyper-specific pose is likely based on this render here. Now, the figure includes a trap spring accessory, which is very cool because the normal Sonic came with a normal spring. Now, the figure did also get a repaint in the Jakks Gold line into this very nice, shiny Metal Sonic, but that figure is very hard to find. But even still, if you can just track down the normal version, I'd say you should get him. He looks really good. Wave 3, I sadly have a lot less to say about than Wave 2. Now, it does include a Sonic re-release, but with a purple Chaos Emerald, which is cool, a Dr. Eggman with a yellow checkpoint, which is less cool, and a Super Sonic, which is technically a new character, but due to it being a Sonic repaint with a new head, there's not much to really say. He does look very nice, and I'm happy to see him in the line, though. The other new figure in the wave is Mighty the Armadillo, who does introduce a new packaging variant with the classic Sonic render and lighter blue color scheme. The figure looks very accurate to the character, based on his appearance in Sonic Mania. Now, my figure has a bit of a different paint job because of a failed custom I did, but the articulation is as similar to Tails, with the skinnier legs providing less movement. He does include a ring box, which is nice, and yeah, he's really cute, though again, sadly the legs are a little limited, which can make him a little hard to stand up just due to his big head. Oh, also, I think the open hand and closed fists are based on the Knuckles Chaotix artwork, which is cool. Now, Wave 3 of the 2.5-inch line did also introduce a Gold Chow variant, which is cool, but there's nothing new there. But it also introduced a Motobug figure. This looks pretty cool. He actually has a real rolling wheel, which means it did include a display stand so you can actually prop him up. Beyond that, he's got a little bit of movement in his arms. So yeah, he's pretty cool. I'm happy they're starting to do Badniks. Now, Wave 4 is the rarest wave by far. Starts off with a re-release of Knuckles, but with a blue Chaos Emerald this time. Then we also got a Tails re-release, but this time he actually has the spinny tails like the version I have. Now, Shadow got repainted into Super Shadow, and this figure is sadly inaccurate, as he's supposed to be a much lighter yellow. Instead, this figure seems to be based more on how Super Shadow looked in his own game, which is alright, but still, the lighter yellow is more common in the games. And sadly, this figure, despite just being a cheap repaint, is the most expensive figure in the line. So I'd say just try and wait for a re-release, or just do it yourself. The other figure for Wave 4 is Classic Sonic. Now, he looks very accurate to how he looks in 3D, and the figure itself is pretty similar to Mighty in terms of like articulation and body sculpt. I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow share a mold in some way, but still, I really like the figure, how he looks. And yeah, I'd say you should get one. Now, Wave 5 is the most interesting to talk about so far, as it's an all-classic wave, as you can see, but it was also made for the 30th anniversary, as you can see with this Mighty re-release that has no difference besides a slightly different sticker on the box monitor box, I mean. Now, the Sonic in the Wave is a little different too, as he has a new head and hand. Based on this artwork of Laughing Classic Sonic, he sadly does not have a pointer finger, but an open hand that's reused for Mighty. But still, the open hand does allow for some pretty cute expressiveness that you can give him. As for entirely new figures, the first up is Classic Eggman, who looks very accurate to the classic design. Now, for articulation, the figure has basically the exact same articulation as his modern counterpart, but because there's no detailing on the arms, they work a lot better, and the legs are also a lot easier to pose as well. Now, he includes a spinning sign, like in the classic games, but it only has his face on both sides, which is lame. But overall, this figure is really good, though, like with his modern counterpart, he does scale a lot better with the 2.5-inch figures. The next figure in the line was one that made me very excited and one I never expected to make. It's Mecha Sonic. As you can see, he looks very accurate to how he looks in the games. His articulation is also very good with a nice ball joint at the head, some elbows, and, knees, legs, the usual articulation for the line, but still, it's very good here. Now, the figure did have a Jakks Gold version that it was made, but it doesn't really change much. It's had some black lines on it. But overall, this is one of the best figures in the line, and I'm very happy they made him. As for 2.5-inch, our second Badnik in the line was the Buzz Bomber, which is seemingly based on the Sonic Lost World version, which is cute. Now, the figure has some alright articulation and comes with a stand. Also, some versions come with a ring. As I said, this design's not very posable, so his wings can flap, and he's got like a little bit of movement in the body and a little thruster pieces. Overall, not bad. Wave 6 includes these like weird neon figures of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, and one other new figure, which we'll talk about in a sec. But yeah, they look really ugly, and that's because they were supposed to be like backlight figures for the 30th anniversary. Now, Sonic comes with a yellow emerald, and that's like the only thing worth mentioning, but it's not that important later, as you'll see. So yeah, skip these. They are really bad. The new figure in the wave is Amy Rose, though, and she looks really good. Her open mouth is based on this render, I believe. Figure is a bit tall, but that's okay, because her articulation works very well. With her shorter legs, she wouldn't be able to move quite as well. She includes her Pico Pico hammer, which fits nicely in her hand, and it's nice to see a very character-specific accessory. So yeah, overall, Amy Rose is a good figure. As for 2.5-inch, we got a crab meat, and he looks really cute. Now, articulation is actually surprisingly decent for such a little guy, but yeah, there's not really much to say. He's got arms, legs, and eye stalk rotation. So let's move on to Wave 7. Wave 7 was truly exciting, but there's also a Sonic Tail re-release, so we'll skip those and start with the new figures. Start with Silver, who looks very accurate to this render right here. I think that's what it's based on. As for articulation, the figure is the exact same as like Sonic and Shadow. So all three hedgehogs have 11 points of articulation, which makes sense. The figure includes a red star ring accessory, which is neat, but Silver never really appears in any of the games I use him. And overall, this figure looks pretty cool. I really like him. I just wish they slimmed down his waist a bit. He's a little too chunky. However, the other figure is the one everyone was looking for, and that was E123 Omega. Figure looks basically perfect, though it is worth knowing that his articulation is a little awkward, as he does not have biceps, instead lower forearm swivels, along with wrist swivels, a waist swivel, hips, knees, and ankles. So unfortunately, his poses are a little limited. But beyond that, he looks really nice, though there is a variant where the eyes are sometimes gray or black, depending on which copy you got. He also comes with the yellow Chaos Emerald, so you don't have to buy the Neon Sonics. But yeah, Omega was like one that everyone wanted and put a lot of eyes on this line, so good luck finding him, though, because he is very expensive now. Wave 8 is mostly re-releases. The only one that is worth mentioning is the Super Sonic, who now comes with a Cyan Chaos Emerald. The only new figure in the wave was Rouge the Bat, who looks very accurate, and the open hand is likely based on this specific render of Rouge the Bat. The articulation is actually a lot bigger and better than most, as it actually has elbows, and her wings can also articulate, which is impressive, so it gives her a total of 15 points instead of the normal 11 that the line usually has. She comes with her harp on, which she can hold in her hand, and overall, I'd say Rouge is like the best figure so far in the line, for me personally. This was a character everyone really wanted, because her original figure was very expensive and really hard to find. Wave 9 includes re-releases of Sonic and Tails, so let's skip them and get to the new figures. Up first is Espio the Chameleon, our first Team Chaotix member. The figure looks pretty good, though he does have a smile instead of a frown like on most of his renders. The articulation is sadly the standard Sonic 11 points of movement. figure, but he does have a tail rotation, which is nice and different. As for accessories, he comes with a yellow checkpoint, which is kind of lame, but you can always give him a kunai if you have a Ninja Turtle figure like I do. But overall, this figure does look really nice, and I'm happy to see some more of the expanded cast. The other figure from the wave is Egg Robo, who is strangely marked as a modern figure despite being in the classic games more often, especially if you look at the artwork that it's likely based off. Figure has pretty good articulation, including full elbows, biceps, wrists, legs, knees, and ankles. So about 13 points total, just like Mecha Sonic and Eggman. Figure includes a blaster, which he can hold, which is nice. And overall, I'd say this is a great figure and continues the great quality these new waves have been showing. Wave 10 has a re-release of Amy and what appears to be a re-release of Classic Sonic, however, with a new head. But there is also a difference in the arm length, as you can see, compared to the original. So yeah, this Sonic is alright, but not much different compared to the original. Either version's good. The next figure in the line is Ray, another first-time character for the line. The figure looks very adorable, just like the character is known to look. The articulation is similar to the other classic figures, but with some additional tail movement in the back. Mine is a little different because I fulfill custom I tried. He includes a red Chaos Emerald as an accessory, which is good because the Super Shadow figure that also includes the Emerald is very expensive. But yeah, overall, this is a very cute figure, and I'm happy to see Jakks made him so early on. The last figure in the wave is the second Team Chaotix member, that being Vector the Crocodile. The figure looks very accurate to the CGI model, and I believe is based on this render. The articulation is decently for the character's size. He's got elbows instead of knees, but his mouth also opens, which is a neat detail. But beyond that, it's nothing too special. He unfortunately only comes with a lame 10-ring accessory, which was reissued from the original Shadow figure. Now, the Jazzwares version of this character from back in like the 2009 had a walkie-talkie accessory, which would have been much better. But given the figure size here, I'll let it slide because it is still a really fun figure and you should definitely get one. As for 2.5-inch Wave 10, we got a Dark Chow figure, which is pretty similar to the normal Chow figure, just with a slightly different pose and new, features like wings. But beyond that, the articulation is the same, and it comes with 2 rings. Wave 11 was the most hyped wave since Wave 7, but it does include Sonic and Knuckles re-releases, so we're skipping those and moving right on to Big the Cat. This figure looks very good and is accurate to the CGI model. As for articulation, it's pretty limited because he is such a big boy, but that's okay. Now, sadly, the figure only comes with 2 rings, which is very lame, but given the size, I kind of get it, though it is disappointing considering previous lines gave Big either his frog, his fishing rod, or both. But thankfully, you can also mix and match them, as the figure can accommodate both, and yeah, if you can do that, I would recommend him a lot. Even without, he's still a pretty decent figure overall. Was the second figure that got everyone excited, and that was the villain Chaos Zero from Sonic Adventure. The figure looks very accurate to how he is depicted in the CGI model department, and the articulation is actually really good, with both elbow and knee joints, making this figure one of the most posable in the line. And thankfully, even though he's clear plastic, I haven't heard of any breakages. Now, the figure includes the Master Emerald, which is huge compared to the other emeralds, which is appropriate. And as such, I really like this figure. He's a very cool character and a very cool action figure, and it shows that Jakks was very committed to making more of the extended cast than previous lines ever did. For 2.5-inch, we got a Chopper Bradnik, which is a fish with not much movement, and the Burrow, which has a little more movement, but it's still not too much to talk about. The head swivels, arms move. That's about it for him. But there was one 2.5-inch figure this wave that had everyone excited. That figure was Charmy B. This character is very exciting because he is the final Chaotix member, and he looks very accurate to his CGI render. The articulation is surprisingly decent for a 2.5-inch figure with full head, arms, legs, and even wing movement. But sadly, this figure is super rare, which sucks because he looks great and can actually fit in Vector's hand. And yeah, I really wish this guy was easier to find, because with him you have a full Chaotix team, and with him that also means an almost full Sonic Heroes cast. Wave 12 contains mostly re-releases, but the Tails is interesting as he actually comes with his models electric from the games, which makes this the best release of the Tails figure by far. As for new characters, we got Super Silver, who is surprisingly a different mold. Look, the elbow is more bent on the new one, which is likely to replicate this artwork even though it's reversed. But beyond that, the articulation is the exact same as the original figure, so the new art molding doesn't really change anything. He also comes with the final Chaos Emerald, which is great because with him, that completes the Super Hedgehog trio from Sonic 06. And yeah, he looks great along with them, though, like I said, you'll probably have to customize the shadow if you want a proper Super Shadow because of that price, man. This figure in the wave is Jet the Hawk from the Sonic Riders series, and the figure looks very accurate to the CGI renders that we have nowadays. The articulation is that of the standard Sonic figures, that being 11 points of movement, though his tail does move slightly, but it's not really that useful. He includes his extreme gear board, which is perfect, and can actually plug onto it so he looks like he's riding it. Beyond that, though, that's all you can really say about him. He's a good figure, though if you get him, make sure you get a flight stand and some effects, because that really makes him shine even more. Only new 2.5-inch figure for Wave 12 was this Neutron. He looks cute, moves at his arms, legs, head, and tail, but that's all I can really say about him. Wave 13 features re-releases of Sonic and Metal Sonic, which aren't worth discussing, though the Sonic figure does come with a skateboard, which does make it one of the better releases of the standard Sonic figure in the line. For new figures, here's Cream the Rabbit. She looks very cute, just like her CGI render. And for articulation, it is the exact same as the other figures, though her knees are kind of useless due to how small her legs are. She also has a tiny tail rotation, which is neat, but doesn't really affect anything. She includes an ice cream cone, which she can hold, which is based on one of her idle animations from the Sonic Advance games. So yeah, Cream is great, and especially since her only other action figure was from Toy Island and is very, very rare to this day. So yeah, if you just want Cream, you should get this. And with her, that completes our Sonic Heroes cast of playable characters. The other figure of the wave was Infinite, for the main villain of Sonic Forces, and he looks amazing, just like the CGI render from the game. The articulation is the exact same as the other figures, but with a tail rotation. Though sadly, mine doesn't work anymore because I had to glue it in place. And the reason for that is this figure cannot stand unless that tail is pointed down and his knees are bent. That is the biggest flaw of this figure. Now, he does include a Phantom Ruby accessory, which is neat. And yeah, unfortunately, if you get this figure, you'll need to invest in a flight stand for him, as otherwise he will not stand. But with him, that almost completes the Sonic Forces villain cast. We just need a new Zavok figure, because the previous one from Tomy is way too small to scale with anything from Jakks. It begins with re-releases of Sonic and Shadow. Though the Sonic is interesting, because he actually does have a new facial expression, which is nice, showing him a little more angry than usual. Now, surprisingly, Knuckles got a brand new mold this wave. And as you can see, compared to the original, it's a lot different. However, the articulation is basically the same, but due to this not being as much of a pre-pose as the original, the figure is able to use those joints a lot better. And yeah, as you can see side by side, there's no comparison. This new one is much better than the original. The other new figure in the wave is Blaze the Cat. Now, she has an open hand and a fist, likely to replicate this render of her that I found. Her articulation is the standard Sonic figure of 11 points of movement, though her tail can nudge ever so slightly left to right. Figure features a Soul Emerald from the Sonic Rush series, though it is massively oversized here. But overall, this figure is still really good. Got really no complaints to say about her. It's nice to have another female character to the roster. 15 releases Shadow again, but with a new accessory for him. But it also has a classic Supersonic. Now, the figure is sadly identical to the original figure, even though that mold could use some improvements by now. But yeah, nothing new here to talk about, though. He did have a Jakks Gold version that added some white fade on the front, which looks cool. As for new molds, the first is the Heavy Gunner. Now, this guy looks very accurate to the art that we've shown in Sonic Mania. Now, he looks very similar to the Egg Robo figure, but is surprisingly a new mold. The articulation, though, is virtually identical, though the hips are a little worse, honestly, which kind of sucks, but you can still get him into a lot of cool poses, and I'd say he is definitely worth it just because he's such a new character, and I was surprised to see them make him already. Most hyped release for me and a lot of other people in this wave was Mephiles the Dark. Now, the figure looks slightly different than how he looked in Sonic 06, and that's because I believe they based it off of his Sonic Forces Speed Battle render, which shows a lot more of a purple color scheme. The articulation is the exact same 11 points of movement as the other figures, but it allows a lot more range, as he actually features some slight elbow movement just due to the way his wrists are sculpted. He includes a flame base accessory, which completes the look and makes this figure look absolutely incredible. And yeah, Mephiles is my favorite figure in the wave, and that's saying something because I don't even like this character, and yet he might be my favorite figure in the whole line. There's 2 old molds and 2 new molds. is a new character, that being Metal Sonic 3.0. Now, what's interesting is that Jazzwares previously pitched this character back in the 2000s, but Sega rejected it, being that it was too obscure. But now here he is, and he looks very accurate to the CGI render. But beyond that, the figure is very identical to Metal Sonic in every single way, minus the paint scheme, which means that they sadly did not fix the arm swivel problem. The first new mold is a classic Knuckles figure, and he looks very accurate to how classic Knuckles usually looks in 3D. The articulation is that of the standard classic Sonic figure, which means 11 points, but a little limited, and the leg is just due to how stubby they are. The figure includes a purple Chaos Emerald accessory re-release, which is cool, and overall this figure looks very nice. There's not much to really say on him, as he's the same body as most of the classic figures in the line, but still, not bad. The other new mold in the wave was the Heavy King from Sonic Mania, and he looks very accurate to how he looked in Sonic Mania. The articulation is similar to that of the Heavy Gunner, though the legs are once again still problematic. But he's not so bad, and at least this one has a nice shiny metallic paint. He comes with his scepter, which can hold in either hand, and it looks very nice. And overall, this is a very cool figure. And with two of them down, I'm hoping that Jakks makes the rest of these guys soon. 16 of the 2.5-inch line also had a figure worth talking about, that being the Caterkiller. It has 1 point of movement at the head, and it has wheels underneath. And that's all I can say about it. Let's move on to Wave 17 of the 4-inch line. Wave 17 has 3 re-releases, those being of Silver and Rouge, who are rare by this point, so they're nice inclusions, and a Classic Sonic, who does at least have a new face, which I actually prefer this version over the other Classic Sonics in the line so far. However, the entire brand new figure was Neo Metal Sonic, and he looks absolutely amazing, especially since he barely had any game appearances up to this point. Now, the figure's articulation is pretty similar to the standard Metal Sonic, which means that he sadly still keeps the really bad, elbow movement swivel, but he does include a waist swivel, which is nice. However, the legs are limited by the skirt piece, which is made of a flexible plastic instead of soft cloth. The figure comes with a lightning bolt piece that can plug into his hand, and that looks very nice. And yeah, Neo Metal Sonic is one of the best figures in the line because he was not expected. I never thought they would make him because he was so obscure, but he looks great, and now you can officially say you have a full Sonic Heroes cast. 2.5-inch, we got a Ball Hog figure. He looks cute, arms rotate, head moves, nothing else to say. Let's move on to Wave 18. Wave 18 has 2 re-releases of Sonic and Vector and 2 new characters. Starting with classic Amy, she looks really cute, as she should, which is nice. She comes with a yellow Chaos Emerald, which is like this render, which is a nice reference to the game Sonic Superstars. Her articulation is pretty similar to the other 4-inch classic figures, though her legs are a little more limited than usual just due to her skirt. But overall, she's a pretty alright figure. I just wish she kind of came with her hammer. She even has an open hand, so you'd think she would have at least came with the hammer. But whatever, I'm sure Jakks will hopefully re-release her again soon, and maybe they'll give her her hammer this time. Figure in the line was classic Metal Sonic, and he looks really cool. Comes with a spinning sign like classic Eggman did. Now his hands are in a specific pose, but I couldn't find the render that uses them, though this one was the closest, but once again the hands are swapped. Articulation is about the same as his modern counterpart, except they actually remembered the proper bicep swivels instead of lower forearm swivels like the previous. So yeah, classic Metal Sonic is the best Metal Sonic so far, and I definitely recommend getting him. He's really fun. 2.5-inch, you could get a Flicky this wave. It's a Flicky. It comes with a ring, and it barely moves, and it barely stands. 18, however, has releases of these 3, with 0 differences. Only new figure this wave is a 4-inch Fang the Sniper. As you see, he comes with his wanted poster from Sonic Mania. That's cool. And yeah, the pose seems to be based on this specific artwork. The articulation is the same as the other classic figures, though his legs and knees are very, very hard to move on my copy. But beyond that, he's really cute and really cool. I'm happy to see all these classic characters finally get some love in the line. After a while, it was mostly modern for a long time. So for 2.5-inch, we got Rocky the Seal. He's cute. Wave 19, we got a re-release of Espio, classic Amy without her hammer, so what's the point? And a Sonic. Now, the Sonic is cool because he actually has the soap shoes from Sonic Adventure 2. But beyond that, it's the same figure, so I'm not going to discuss him any further than that. New figure is this Classic Tails, but even then, not really, as he was previously released in this 3-pack with Classic Sonic and Classic Knuckles, but this is the first time he was available on his own. He is likely based on this artwork as he has one open hand and one more closed hand. The articulation is the identical to the other 2.5-inch classic figures, but of course, because his tails also rotate. So yeah, this figure looks very cute, and I'm very happy with how much of the classic cast we have now compared to when the line started. For the first 10 waves, you could only get a few of them, but now you got almost all the mainstays of the series. For 2.5-inch, we got Pocky. Not much to mention. He's cute, but his articulation's limited. Moving on to Wave 21, which is our current wave, we see a re-release of Classic Sonic, a re-release of Metal Sonic, and a re-release of the Bad Knuckles. Good job, Jakks Pacific. The only new figure in the wave is a 4-inch Trip, and she looks really cool. She's very similar to the 2.5-inch one I already reviewed, but with some extra joints on the back that you can see, like the knees and some wrists. She looks very accurate to how she looks in Sonic Superstars, though I do wish she had a removable mask. Interestingly, there was one last figure. It was originally released in this 3-pack called the Sonic Forms pack, but it later got a single release at Smith's in the UK. This is the Werehog figure. Now, he looks very good, though his pose is a little strange with the hands open. That's because it's based on this Sonic Channel artwork, which is a great choice. As for the articulation, this is the best the line has ever seen. The head can actually move up and down now. The arms have elbows and wrists, but the best part is the legs, which actually now have full-on ankle pivots and hinges, allowing for really dynamic poses. And if this is the new standard going forward, I am very excited to see what other figures they can make in this style, because this is really cool and really good. And looking into the future a little bit, we got Wave 22 reveal, which has mostly re-releases, but also look, a giant Pecky! Oh my god, look at that! This is what I'm saying. Look, nobody's off limits. This character has one appearance in all of canon, and it's a cameo in Sonic Superstars, and he's getting a full figure. This is perfect, and this shows that the line is not afraid to do anybody. And yeah, this 4-inch line is really good, as like you showed. Now, the reason I like this line is because it has a lot of variety, and also it's cheap. Each figure is only $10, and that's a steal. Now, technically, there were 2 other figures that are 4 inches and from Sonic the Hedgehog and made by Jakks Pacific, but those are part of a spin-off line that I'll have to cover at a different date. But all I can say is that they are both really good. So my final thoughts are, this line's great, and please make a Zavok figure, please. Oh my god, please make a Zavok figure. I just want a Zavok figure.